just going in one may not be the right answer for you, but being able to retire in that year, we can definitely do that for you.
Matt from Jonesboro, what if I plan on retiring now before the year on my target date fund? Is it okay to keep it more aggressively invested if I have some cash saved up? Matt thinks, I think it's okay, possibly. Don't know how aggressively you're invested. We don't know the number on that target date fund, but I do sense a little too granular of a focus on the year on your target date fund. And before we answer your question, Matt, I do want to kind of, for the audience, describe what that is. So the target date funds over the last decade or so, 15 years, have become really popular inside of employer-sponsored plans like 401ks because they're making things easy. It's the simple button for sure. A number is attached to the name of the fund. So if you're in the 2050 fund, that's the year of anticipated retirement from the fund's perspective. So if it's 2050, that's still a long ways off. It's going to be more aggressively invested from an asset allocation perspective. So it's probably going to be mostly equity. The percentage would depend on the fund, but probably 85, 90% equity. If you were in a 2040 fund, you're going to have a little less equity, a little more fixed income. If you're in a 2030 fund, you're catching the drift, right? And as you get closer to those years, once you're invested in the 2050 fund, if you're still in it in 2030, it's going to be ratcheting down on a glide path the amount of asset allocation it has to equities. So that's the way it works. And Matt's here basically suggesting, Tim, that he's got a target date fund that's pretty aggressive, even though he's getting ready to retire. So what should he do?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. And actually, if that's the only fund you have in your plan that you're invested in, well, there might be something wrong with that. Because again, as we near retirement, we do need to make some changes. The problem with the glide path of it may be a 2025 fund or a 2030 fund is it is overly conservative, in meaning that there's going to be a lot more fixed income and a lot less equity in that bond portfolio that you're actually in. So we know that you're going to retire maybe even in 2025 or 2030. Well, your retirement doesn't end there. Your retirement's going to be 20, 25, 30 years potentially. So we always need to have some growth aspect to our investments. So splitting your investments maybe between a couple of the different retirement date funds, if that's what you want to go with, just to make sure that you have maybe a more conservative fund on the front end for that money that you may need in the next 5 to 10 years, but then also a real growth aspect for something that you're not going to need for 20 or 25 years may be the way to go. So just because you have a 2025 or 2030, 2040 fund, whatever it might be, and that may be your intended retirement date, just going in one may not be the right answer for you, but being able to retire in that year, we can definitely do that for you.
Yeah, and what are the chances that everything he has in retirement income sources is in this one plan, much less the one fund? We need a clearer picture of what are you going to be using for retirement income. Looking at former employer plans, are some of those old 401ks still out there? Do you have IRAs? Do you have Roth IRAs? Do you have a pension? Do you have non-retirement assets? What does Social Security look like? We want to incorporate all of your sources of retirement income and build an overall plan, and that will help us determine if some or all of what's in your 401k can be left in a more aggressive fund or if you need to tamp down the risk. And one of the other options, too, if he's going to retire soon, we don't know. I don't think he told us how old he was, did he? No, we didn't get an age. But one of the things, if you are still working and you're going to retire soon or even at retirement, to consider is, are you going to leave the money in the employer plan? Because if you're not going to leave it there, then leaving it in the 2050 fund or whatever target date fund you have is a little bit less important because you're going to be making a plan to roll it over. And that needs to be discussed with your financial advisor if you have one, but you basically have 4 options when either you have left an employer or you retire, or in many cases you reach the age 59 and a half. There are oftentimes eligible in-service distributions, but you have an option to leave the money in your employer plan, and you can certainly do that in retirement. You can roll the money into a new employer plan if you have a new job, which in this case is not applicable if you're going to retire. You can roll it to an IRA, which is a non-taxable event and opens up the investment universe in terms of other investment options for you and wouldn't restrict you to a target date fund. Or you can cash it out, which I would hardly ever recommend because you're going to incur taxes and potentially penalties. But those are things that need to be considered with a financial advisor building an overall retirement income plan, because I'm going to probably assume he's got more pieces to the puzzle here than just how much am I going to leave in my target date fund.